Next, I would like to bring up Steve Coughlin. The title that we have for him, The War on Science, the Ideological Linchpin Driving World War III, I think has been superseded by events or overtaken by events. Steve Coughlin is on our advisory council. He speaks at many, many of our conferences. He's an attorney, author, decorated intelligence officer, has held numerous positions in the arenas of military intelligence and now political warfare. He's the founder and CEO of Unconstrained Analytics and is a senior fellow at Center for Security Policy. And his most recent book, I've seen it floating around here, Re-Remembering the Misremembered Left. Hang on to your hats, because what he's going to share with you right now will knock your socks off. Please welcome Steve Coughlin.
So we have to do a little truth in advertising here, and that is, I was going to give a briefing today called the Ideological Linchpin Driving World War II, the Attack on Science. And I called earlier this week, and I was going through the warning list of the things we're seeing going on, and said, you know, look at, I'm going through the tick list of how we're analyzing things as a threat warning. And she says, could you please, if you would, give the threat warning instead. It's so important, because the reason I called was because I was concerned about the security at this forum, because it's very clear that we're seeing things start becoming operational that are things that we were warning about for a while. So what I want to do, now we'll just wait for a second before we come up on stuff, is just point out, I said, we have this a deal that when we get the full up-briefing, the whole enchilada, which maybe be a full day, maybe 2 days of how to understand, how to re-understand the left, then we're going to come here and give the whole rollout. And it's going to want people at some points to stick pins in their hands. I'm sorry. But it's also going to be one where we're going to be able to show that if you take this to the source and understand it to the source and then move out, you can not only capture how Marxism operates, you can understand why other organizations that you don't think about would cause it to operate. So I'd like to say to the general, I've done some stuff with Jim Penrose over the last couple of years. That's a kind of a point of contact. But as we talk about China, and what I did was I put some Chinese influencers in there to show you that the contact is so close. So we've changed our board for Unconstrained Analytics. My partner died, Rich Higgins. And we got this guy, he's a rabbi, and he starts hitting us all the time. And he says, you know, when you're being taught to be a rabbi, you're always being told, stop seeing what you know and start knowing what you see. And we thought about that, and our view of it is this. Everything that's happening is happening right in front of you, but you're being told how to understand it in a way you can never get to what's really going on. And you will not get to what's really going on unless you make a deliberate decision to do that. Now, this slide right here I put in this morning, it's got to do with nothing other than the fact that there are a number of Republican states looking to dump Eric. And for the people who know what I'm talking about, I just thought, you know, we've been working this issue sub rosa, and we think there'll be a lot of stuff going on. Yesterday, Frank Gaffney opened up the whole proceeding talking about the Borg and Captain Kirk, and you know, and stuff like that. And I said, well, I have to throw this out because one of the briefings we're putting together is how much science fiction is acting as a kind of a preparation for these movements. So you might not know it, but since Star Trek has gone to CBS and it's on their widescreen, on their casting, that they've gone completely woke. So here's a scene from Star Trek last year. And it's a discussion with the Borg, where the discussion goes like this. What if we take this ship and build a better Borg? Okay. A real collective based not on assimilation, but on salvation. A Borg collective that embraces the uniqueness of its members. Well, you know, of course, if you grew up watching Star Trek when the Borg emerged, that wasn't really your understanding of the Borg. But I just kind of wanted to point out that the other side is absolutely pervasive in things going on. I also want to throw out a couple slides. Now, these slides have words in them, and we're really not going to go into the words. We're just going to point out that since Bernays wrote his book called Propaganda, there has been the awareness that those who manipulate the unseen mechanisms of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of this country. Everybody knows that's true, but if we talk about it, we're kicked into a conspiracy theorist narrative. And you know, when you basically do enough of this research where you realize that at every point where you do, watch me, professional analysis, professional intelligence analysis, professional policy analysis, when you get to the point in the wall where you're not allowed to go beyond it, it becomes conspiracy theory. And then you're allowed to be attacked. But what you kind of get this grumbling feeling about is that, but if we don't go there, we're actually not going to get the answer. Even if going and getting the real answer requires you to look at some really, dare we say, convoluted things. So, and it is true. So here we have the famous speech from Kennedy, and what Kennedy said is, he's talking of his famous secret society speech. But what I'd like to focus on is he made a statement that is just specifically political warfare. It is a system which has conspired, is a small print here. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Now, when I come to this quote on political warfare from the book on unrestricted warfare, I want you to understand this is what they're talking about. And what they're saying is, all America understands is military force. They will never understand anything else but military force. You know what we could do? And here's what the whole world knows about America and its National Security Council, its national security apparatus, and they've known it since the 90s because they wrote the book, okay, is America will never figure it out. We can put them in the Middle East and have a war that they impose their own rules so you could never win the war. And American citizens are saying, why are we there? Why are we there? Well, you know, I could tell you that. I won't tell you that. We'll go too far afield. But the point of it is, the second, all intelligence estimates were based on the underlying causes of war on terror, when the enemy said he was fighting jihad to destroy the West, and you were not even allowed to brief that. You were not even allowed to brief it. And the entire intelligence apparatus, policy apparatus, J5, J3, J2, was doing underlying causes. That meant that the whole war would be fought not on causes in fact, okay? And that's when the war was not winnable, and it was not winnable by design. And the only question is, where do you put the fault? And not all of it, not even most of it, goes to Al-Qaeda. You want to talk about the Muslim Brotherhood in America, you know, the turn captured me in around 2015, you really have to understand why the Muslim Brotherhood was allowed to have that influence. Because until you recognize they were allowed to have that influence, you're really in a round room running after, you're the hamster running on a circle that will never come to an end. And that means that the problem we have, and we'll bring it to the political warfare here and now, is the things that are happening in this country are being allowed to happen, and they're being allowed to happen to you. And it wasn't the Chinese. The Chinese know a deal when they see it, and they are certainly a threat. And I don't want to take away anything about what's being said here. But until the 10-meter target, I'm using military language here, when the 10-meter target is shooting you, you have to kind of hold back on the 100-meter target. We're being taken out in the close battle. So here we have the famous quote that I told people, no matter what the brief is, I'm putting the slide in here, because we're just going to say it, okay? This is before 9/11, unrestricted warfare, whether it be the intrusion of hackers, a major explosion at the World Trade Center, or a bombing attack by bin Laden. All of these greatly exceed the frequency bandwidth understood by the American military. This is because they have never taken into consideration and have refused to consider means that are contrary to the tradition and to select measures of operation other than military means. They used holding us in a war to completely penetrate our leaders at every other elements in the political warfare regime. Does that make sense? Okay, so a key thing about understanding books written by Marxists is everything they do is dialectical, including the things you don't think are dialectical that are especially dialectical. Why? Because to understand unrestricted warfare and other things they write, it is essential to recognize that it was written to be understood dialectically. And what that does is it causes it not to be a hard read. It reads different. And you have to be trained to do that. When did the American left become officially a part of Mao's Long March? In 1972. Who here has never heard of a man named Marcuse? Okay. Saying you understand Marxism, especially in America, and have never heard of Marcuse, Adorno, or Horkheimer, is to say you go swimming in a pool that's got no water in it. Okay? Because these are the drivers of the whole thing. And what did he say in 1972? You know, the print is bigger there than on my screen. From the campuses, it has its own base in the infrastructure itself. Moreover, this base extends from the campuses to the economic and political institutions where educated labor is needed, in furtherance of a new scientific revolution that will be part of the social revolution, which the Long March includes the concerted effort to build up counter-institutions. So what are we knowing since 1972? The American left has been dedicated to counter-state operations starting on the college campuses that affects what I'm going to, not today, brief as the #1 attack that Marxism uses. Over a period of time, now what, 50 years later, we could say that if they effectively took over the campus, then they decided who got to get into the graduate programs. And as they got more powerful, they also who they could exclude from the programs. So all of a sudden, if you are not one of them, you don't have a scientific degree. How does that translate into the First Amendment? When you see people at these forums say, "What is your authority?" What is your authority? What they are telling you is, you didn't get a degree from us, and you have to have a degree that we confer that says you are scientifically sound. Otherwise, we shouldn't have to listen to you because you don't have authority. But that is a direct attack on the First Amendment, but you have to recognize its dialectical nature to understand this is as true as it goes. So I'm going to give another thing. This is, I have the complete works of Lenin in my basement, and they were in a box for years, and they're finally back out on the bookshelf. And I took this quote because I don't want you to think I'm obsessed with the dialectic because it's just a wild hair. We took this right up, we literally go and show the page, they'll blow it up, all the things I emphasized that's emphasized there. What did Lenin say? Dialectics is the theory of knowledge of Hegel and Marxism. This is the aspect of the matter. It is not an aspect of the matter. It is the essence of the matter. Now, in philosophy, essence goes to the Greek word ousia, and that, I don't want to burden you, but that means, essence means this is the core being of what it is. And so we have him saying that. But it's not just that he said it. We can go and show that we have Mao quoting Lenin, quoting Hegel. We have Mao quoting Lenin. And on this instance, it's a Marxist determination to control things like the rule of contradiction. Why? Well, because back in the ancient world, Aristotle basically told Plato, you can't have all this weird stuff. It turns out that if you are an apple, you're not an apple. And here you see in this, a whole representative of this, here you have Lenin basically saying, yes, you could be an apple and not an apple, because our whole business is to convince you that our science demands that you say 2 + 2 = 5. Okay? And it is a formula. And if you don't know how the formula works, you will never defeat it. And the first instance they know they won is when you argue against them in that discussion, because then you're in the discussion and that you've lost. So, let's keep it going. Here's another example of Mao quoting Lenin, quoting Hegel. I just want you to know that the fit we're going to have is going to be tight. It's going to be so tight that you can't intervene in it. And it's going to be important for us to say, not this, you didn't know that? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, isn't it interesting that they do this and nobody knows it unless they deliberately go and look for it? So this is really what the brief was going to be about, and I'm going to not beat you up. It is the fact that the original science was the word episteme in Plato's Republic and other things he wrote. And that original science was the science of remembering what your soul knew before you were born, okay? Because your soul is eternal. And so the science at the top of the knowledge architecture of ancient Greece is episteme, which is the science of the dialectic. And the science of the dialectic is the dialectic that removes everything you learned in this world, so your mind is completely free of everything you learned from what you saw, heard, and touched. And now you could have a glimpse. You can engage in something called anamnesis, or recollection of what you knew before you were born. But you see, the thing of it is if you actually don't believe your soul's immortal before you were born, all you did was actually destroy everything you knew in this world, which for most people, even in his time, was everything he ever knew. And that's what Marxism is, because every true believer on the street thinks they're destroying this culture to build a better one. But you could always get quotes of the leaders of Marxism to say, we're here to destroy everything. And a lot of people don't think this classical link is necessary, but here you have Eros and Civilization, written by Marcuse in 1955. And I'm just going to give you I'll give you the top line. He's specifically speaking about Plato's Symposium. And at the bottom line, in 1955, when he's unrolling his Marxist concept in America, he says the road to higher culture leads through the love of boys. Okay? Do you think if we understood that this was the game then, we could have intercepted it? Here's another example where you have Leo Strauss, you have Bloom. They're writing about the Symposium. And if there's a discussion room like this where Marcuse was talking, it's entirely conceivable that the only people in the room who actually understood what they was really saying was Bloom and Strauss. But another example of this, not going back, is that book called Dialectical Enlightenment. Why is that important? Because in that book, Horkheimer and Adorno said that we're going to pattern modern feminism after a woman named Juliet in the Marquis de Sade's book, Juliet. Okay? So my point is, you really don't understand what they're saying when they just say this unless you understand everybody on their team knows you're templating off that. They know it, and you don't. Just like we figured out that you had to understand that milestones was the template through which you decoded everything the Islamic movement said in the open that everybody on their team knew. This is not negotiable if you want to win. It is negotiable if you want to talk about it. So we're going to go quick through here because this is the product of a major period. This is what the dialectical attack looks like. You have the dialectic on top, you have the state as God, and you have the future perfect world. In this instance, it's the science of reason. And we're not going to go to in detail, and you have those people in the middle not quite realizing that they're the target. So we're going to make an example here about the state as God. It will be this. In a dialectical attack where you're asserting control, because the state is God, it must be, what's the word now? Arbitrary in what it does. So it is really important that Fauci comes out and says, a man who did not have a position that gave him the authority to do anything, right? First off, you can wear masks don't work. Masks don't work. Now, we have the way we respond to it. We're going to try to get people to understand it differently. Masks don't work because I said so. Masks don't work because I said so. And then he comes back a week later and says, everybody must wear a mask. Okay? He was right in this paradigm. Why? Because he represents the state is God, and God is always correct when he speaks. And he had to be arbitrary because then he had to show he could bring force to bear to make you pay a price. That's how it operates, okay? That's the game. That's the game. So take a look. This is Marxism. This is Hegel. Marx, Hegel. Marx, Hegel. It goes to dialectical materialism, it goes to the all-powerful state, and it goes to scientific socialism. But this is how you recognize the attack. They have everything in clouds and narratives. So what am I pointing out here? When executed as part of a mass line effort, obvious targets do not present themselves. You, the target, are in a political warfare fog. You are strategically disoriented. You may not recognize the threat. You may not recognize there is a threat. It's in the air. Okay? And you cannot articulate a targetable response. I want to focus on that word because I come from the intel world where IPE, intelligence preparation of the environment, exists to create a picture of the threat that is meaningless if it can't generate targets to attack, kinetically or non-kinetically, and OPE, operational preparation of the environment. Everything you do in the understanding the threat that doesn't generate a target is just simply stuff to talk at the bar with cheese. Fair enough? Now we're going to make this touch what we agreed to. So we're about to turn the corner here, but this is the graphic that seems to get people a lot of response. I made it, and I sat it because I thought it was so crazy, and a man who was kind of my mentor, a retired person who was very high up in counterintelligence, said, no, you need to copyright this. I want you to think of dialectical attacks as an aircraft flying over the top, dropping dialectical bombs, okay? And what happens is the impeachment happens, but it hits the ground right above when the lockdown came. Now what happens is that dialectical bomb includes the script. It includes your script and the other side's script. You're supposed to fight them in that battle, and you're fighting and you're fighting. Do they care if you win? No. Do they care if you lose? No. Do they care if they keep you in the battle? Now if you look up, right about the time we're talking about the impeachment, that's when they launched the lockdown dialectical attack. Right? And we would say, look, there's more to this than we've already taken hits because the bomb hit and now we're fighting. We need to look at what's causing this. I'll say, no, we don't have, almost every conservative group wants to fight says, we don't have time to understand the bigger picture. You know, it seems to me all we have to do is shoot down that plane and everything goes away. Okay? So it is important that when they saw that impact crater and we responded to the impeachment narrative that they won, that's when they shot the COVID lockdown. And once they got people locked down, that's when they shot the BLM narrative. And every one of them had your script. You answered, you fought back on their script, on their timeline, when they wanted you to. And you kept going from blast zone to blast zone to blast zone, never looking at them saying, they're going to take us over the cliff eventually. So that's important because you can create warning from the systems were created. Let me go back. Because the time to understand that the attack happened was when they launched the bomb. And you have all that time to prepare and do everything. And what's the first thing you do? Get out of the blast zone. Get out of their narrative completely. So, but what happens is, and it happened in D.C., I'm commiserating with the general, where if you went in and got it perfectly right, so much so that they came back after the event and said, we wish we'd have listened to you, is they laugh at you. They say, oh, that's not true. So we need to move from the trailing indicators, half our people were taking out, to the leading indicators. And then we might want to say, we could keep preparing for their next drop, or we can shoot the plane down. So this does work. In March 2020, Rich Higgins and I wrote, and Rich Higgins got to the National Security Council, Red Team on COVID, warning all the things that were going on. We also put something called the narrative dominance on COVID that got to the National Security Council, saying the narrative about COVID is completely severable from COVID and it looks like a mass line narrative. We batted 950 on the one and we batted 1,000 on the other. And we showed then the data points to know. So now we're going to kick into the warning. So we're going to use as a baseline before the riot started in Minnesota. After a series of things were written to set this up, I put out something called Requiem for Minnesota. When does the state become a counter-state? And we said that there was going to be violence. It was going to start in Minnesota, exactly the way it ended up happening. And this was in the hands of people, including people inside relevant, responsible government institutions beforehand. You see the date here comes after. It's because they pleaded with me not to put it up for a while. So, and there you have Ellison holding the Antifa book, right? This is the Attorney General of Minnesota saying, we're there, guys. you got the green light. So we said, this is going to start about on Memorial Day. Now, we don't mean Memorial Day. We mean that the left in America likes to stop their events around the Memorial Day weekend, plus or minus a week. In Europe, they like to start it on May Day. They just like to have these things started so they can move through the summer. So we use this to kind of set up our paradigm, and here you have the same warning concerning now the trans issue, right? That's the lieutenant governor of Minnesota, okay? And she's wearing that. And right next to her is Kamala Harris, who about a week ago came out and made these statements. So what's happening is mass line narratives are going to come out, and they will use a word like, or it might be the same word, peaceful protest. Now, you're an uninitiate, so you hear them say, that's crazy. The initiated knew that when they said it's a peaceful protest, it means we're giving you free rein, and the people who try to stop you, we will obstruct and even arrest. That is the code. So every time you are catching yourself watching something, the left says something crazy, it doesn't make sense, I want you to check yourself, and I want you to know now that you know that even if you don't know what they communicated, it's that they communicated, and that you shouldn't laugh at all. Fair enough? Make sense? So here it is. This is the lieutenant governor of Minnesota, says protect trans kids with a knife. She is saying, we have the power to take your 10-year-old child that we identified in public school by brute force if necessary and put them on a transition. And if you get in the way, she's holding a knife for a reason. And Kamala Harris last week basically said the same thing in a little bit more coded language. And this is what they're talking about, okay? So her statement right here about protect trans kids isn't, it's important, even if, no, not even if the parents say no, especially if the parents say no, okay? This is the power of the state imposing its will through counter-state activity where the governor will conduct himself nicely as the state leader, and as the head of the counter-state movement, he's sending out command and control orders. Make sense? Okay? And there you see it. So talking to Karen, this is one of the things, minus the pictures, that people got. And I hope I got this, I put it in, I thought, and yep, we'll get it. And here's just another example. That kid can't be more than, what, 6th grade? You know, among other things, this is sterilization. We had pictures on the male side, but you know, I just thought they were a little more graphic, so we didn't include them. Well, I mean, they're kind of disturbing. But you see, these children are being chemically altered and surgically altered in an unrecoverable way. So I just can't get my mind around it. And this is the one of the mom, so proud of her daughter for being trans. So here's the thing. I think we've been conditioned by watching all these sci-fi movies and all these adventure and kind of these, you know, movies about sorcery, being the witch who throws things in fire or something like that. And of course, I think that's true. But I think when you go to the Bible, both the Old or New, when they talked about witchcraft and sorcery, they were talking about this. They were talking about the mind control that would have a mother oversee her daughter being completely altered, or son, okay, and be proud of it. Take her husband to court so he loses parental rights. That is what I would call sorcery. And we'll use that. Now, it's an interesting thing because we have in Leviticus twice forbidding it, but the interesting thing in Galatians, the New Testament, is the Greek word they use for sorcery, and it's pretty consistent. There's a couple others, but the main one is pharmakia, okay? From which you get the word pharmacology, okay? Because it was putting people in trances after you gave them a potion. Isn't that interesting? So here it is. I want you to see here that everybody will be shocked that everybody's in the same trade dress. This is deployed already. It's deployed. They're ready to go. They have the same symbology. You see that? So here's the thing. We're not going to read the whole Bezmenov thing here. We're going to hit, when we take control after the revolution, the first thing we're going to do is we will line them up against the wall and shoot them. Why? Because these are the people Marxism needs to take you and destabilize you. And they know how effective they are. They are the ones who put them here. And they will not tolerate these people because they're nuts. And they know it. But here's the thing, and I kind of want to put my note here. When your base turns to them, when the people who you're with turns to the Marxist to protect them and protect their family because they did what you were afraid to do in this scheme, it's at that point that you become irrelevant because the protection of their family depend upon a state leader who will take these people out. They don't want you to die, they want you to become irrelevant. I mean, they will help along the line. So this is the way to know this. So I'm just giving you the graphic. This trans with an axe goes into a store, and the guy's yucking with him while he's holding an axe, and as soon as he leaves, he axes him. So the line, and somebody else. And it's like, warning, when a trans approaches you with an axe, you might want to leave the store. Got it. And we're gonna hit it right on time. Or just maybe a minute over, is that okay? So here you see the trans stuff. Because we have to hit Christian nationalism to hit another aspect of this. Because I'm really setting that up. So here you have the non-binary nature of these people, and here you have the new trans flag. And it's with people holding guns. This is Minnesota holding that. This is a battle flag. They mean it to be a battle flag. And you see this quote about making you terrorized. We had that in our Remembering the Misremembered Left. I hope they didn't quote us. But what we're seeing is this is what's coming out. So I want to explain. Our flag color, of course, is the intersectional rainbow, the seizure-inducing progress pride flag. The new stripes added to the rainbow to represent black, brown, and transgender people is the new American Revolutionary flag. Please understand, if you go to that church where there's a nice minister, he has that flag, you do not take time to wonder whether he understands why he has the flag. As long as he has the flag, he's batting for the other team. Catholic, evangelical, some synagogues, if they got that flag, they are negating the basis of what they're doing by having it. So we have a brief to explain intersectionality, and we're not going to go into this, and it's about when you get done with the intersectional activity, what you have done is cancel the culture. Cancel the culture is the marketing term for destroy the culture, or aufheben der Kultur, which is the Frankfurt School motto. And of course, once you've canceled the culture, people become awakened, right out of Mao. If we tried to go on the offensive when the masses were not yet awakened, ... So what are the masses called when they are awakened, if not woke? I don't want people to think, what could this word mean? They ambushed a whole bunch of Republicans and conservatives. They didn't understand what they were looking at. Here's Gavin Newsom, and we're going to fly through this. And he's talking about something that literally takes a quote from Marcuse, from repressive tolerance, to say that we are going to create freedom by denying conservatives a vote. And what I put right next to it is a quote from Mao that says the same thing after you win the revolution. And after the revolution, you don't have to be nice and cover your meaning. We have a document that's over 186 pages. It has over 115 pages of just line item organizations of people involved. And I would like to let you know that this Marxist organization has a legal committee, National Lawyers Guild for Mass Incarceration. You know, you can't make it up. And so now we're on Christian nationalism. We'll see if we can write this out. Okay. I was asked by Michelle Bachmann to give a presentation on this to a church, to talk about it in the way they're seeing how they're attacked, but it's actually a lot more. Okay? And what I want to do is bring all this stuff together in this brief, because what you don't know and you don't see unless you listen to it is a couple years ago there was a tele meeting of the Muslim Brotherhood in America where there was a decision that the most powerful pro-Israel organization were Christians, patriotic Christians. And they got in a discussion with the left, who are their partners in almost everything they do. Okay? That's why they are, if you see the word intersectional with the Muslim Brotherhood, that's the cue that they're in the intersectional takedown. And they said, The left wants to destroy Christian nationals because they're the MAGA base, and the Islamic portion of it wants to destroy them because they're pro-Israel. So you will see things, and it's accelerating now. This is a couple years ago. They will look like they're unrelated. That thing over there in Israel, this agreement with China over there with Iran, this thing in North Dakota. And what you need to understand, if you understand mass line attack narratives, is every one of them is on time. Okay? And they're in the fold. That's why we have that you're in a fog. So let's go. This is what you're not seeing about Christian nationalism. That's Bob Roberts, Reverend Bob, who codes as Republican. It's important. And there he is with the head of the WML, Al-Isa, and Imam Majid, was the head of the Muslim Brotherhood in America. Here you have him attacking Christians on the January 6th narrative for being pro-Trump. Here you have him attacking another group of Christians. This church has totally subverted and compromised the gospel. Okay? These are Marxists, by the way. Okay? Here you have that. Okay? Here you have him seeking up his narrative with the World Economic Forum, which means this is internationally coordinated, synchronized to the national and state level. Okay? Here you have them going after someone to resign in the name of Christianity. Here you have Imam Majid. Here you have Bob Roberts with Imam Majid and a Vietnamese communist. Frank, does this remind you of anything? This is exactly what happened with Trump's transition team with Reverend Seipel, who brought in the children of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood. And we have these graphics here. They were the people put in charge of Trump's transition for national security. It's a replay, okay? This is a node that has to be consciously recognized. So here you have, what we're not seeing is he's building bridges. Well, people who know what we did understand that quotes Sayyid Qutb, the Muslim Brotherhood builds bridges not to bring them over, not to have a conversation, but only to bring people over. So every time you hear a building bridges metaphor, I don't care that the person who told you that didn't know this. It's about this. And it doesn't matter that they don't know. So here you have Bob Roberts praising Pompeo and Vice President Pence when they brought the Muslim Brotherhood into the State Department to run their stuff. Here they are. This was the first ambassador. I forgot the name of the organization. We're coming up on the next slide. Because I want to see all these things are happening and they're choreographed, okay? Here they're going after Brownback, okay? Why? Because Secretary of State Pompeo created the Human Rights Advisory Board in the State Department that was to be led by Yusuf Hamza at the direction of Brownback, and it was blessed off by Pence, and they're at that event. This is the same Yusuf Hamza who was part of the Benghazi cover-up, and he's a known player. So you should know that under Islamic law, the exclusive definition of human rights codified at the United Nations is exclusively Sharia law. So when our evangelical friends, Pompeo and Pence, put a man in the Human Rights Division of the State Department on Human Rights, it was over. Can I take a minute? Okay, we're almost done with this section. So now this is, well, because we'll wrap it up. I won't get to other examples. But here we have the penetration of Christian media. Here's Al-Isa, who's on the advisory board of the All Arab News, which is run by Rosenberg, Lamb. I just can't read their names here. But they are deeply associated with Christian broadcasting. So now you have Christian broadcasting in a close relationship. Here you're having them chucking it up again with Imam Majid. But now we're getting to the point where we're coming to the summer, and here you see a meeting between, I forgot her name, Sarsour and the head of MPAC, and at the 25-minute mark, they're talking about the success in escalating anti-Semitism in the conservative Christian community. Here you see Bob Roberts also starting to push up some kind of anti-Israel stuff. They all seem disconnected, and out of nowhere, floating around, is Benjamin Netanyahu talking about how easily it is to manipulate America. All these things are a little drip, drip, drip. And then you have Israel has no right to exist speech in downtown London. And now, and we'll end it with this slide, is the window is open. Like when you give briefs in the military, when you stomp your feet, you say, if you get this question wrong on the test, you will fail. The window is open when China brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia to put their stuff aside. That can't last. The window is open, and it's open now going into summer. And we didn't finish the other examples, but I think the point was made. Does this sound interesting? Thank you very much.